This is Crazy HOA Moments. And yes, the tow truck really showed up. You need to clear this immediately, or I am writing you up for property damage. That was Virginia Anderson, compliance officer for the Landing at Icefall Terrace Association, standing on my sidewalk at 6:30 in the morning, pointing at a salt stain the size of a dinner plate. I am a court runner who files documents and knows deadlines, so I knew exactly how absurd this was. The stain was from the city plow that had come through at 4 in the morning, spraying salt slush across every driveway on the block. She did not care. She had a laminated rule card she waved but kept unreadable, a clipboard with a plastic rain cover that fogged up in the cold, and a smile that told me she had been waiting for this moment. I had moved to Chicago 6 months earlier for the job, a small house in a neighborhood where group emails are used like public shaming posters, and a home-based business license that let me run a document prep side hustle out of my dining room. That license was about to become the center of everything. "Your paperwork is cute, mine has a letterhead," Virginia said, tapping the clipboard. "I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I looked past her at the rest of the block. Every single sidewalk had the same salt stain pattern. Every single driveway had slush pushed up against the apron. The city had done a heavy pass overnight because a storm was coming, and they wanted the arterials clear before morning commute traffic started. That was the deadline she was holding over me. The HOA claims my sidewalk must be cleared before morning commute traffic starts, even though the city had just salted it an hour ago. I asked her if she was going to fine everyone on the block. She smiled wider. "Just you," she said. "You are the only one who has failed to maintain compliance with winter pedestrian safety standards. I have documentation." She flipped a page on the clipboard. I could not read the text through the fogged plastic, but I could see highlighter marks and a printed photo. It was my driveway, taken yesterday, before the plow came through. I realized she had been planning this. I swallowed my anger, because I knew the moment to use it was coming. I had learned early that fighting Virginia on the sidewalk was a waste of breath. She lived for these moments. She had been on the board for 3 years, had taken the compliance officer role seriously enough to print business cards, and had a reputation for finding violations that did not exist until she invented them. The Landing at Icefall Terrace Association had 140 homes, a clubhouse nobody used, and a set of covenants that Virginia interpreted like a personal weapon. I had heard stories. Fines for trash cans left out 6 minutes past pickup. Liens threatened over lawn height measured with a ruler she carried in her purse. A neighbor told me she once tried to tow someone for parking in their own driveway during a guest event because the covenant said guest parking only in designated spaces. The board had voted her down that time, but she had been getting bolder. I told her I would handle it. She smiled again, made a note on the clipboard, and walked back to her car, a purple sedan with an HOA parking placard she had made herself. I watched her drive off, then I looked at the stain again. It was rock salt and water. It would dry in an hour. But she had my address, my violation history, which was 0, and now a photo she could use to start a file. I went inside, made coffee, and called my ally, a local mediator named Marcus, who explains how to keep it legally clean. He had helped another neighbor fight a lien 2 years ago, and he knew Virginia's playbook. "Document everything," Marcus said. "Photos, timestamps, weather reports, city plow schedules. She is going to escalate. They always do." He was right. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail. It was from the Landing at Icefall Terrace Association, printed on letterhead signed by Virginia Anderson, compliance officer. It claimed I had missed a hearing about the salt stain violation, a hearing I was never told about. The notice said the board had voted in my absence to impose a $50 fine, and that I had 7 days to pay or the fine would double and a lien packet would be filed. I checked my email. Nothing. I checked my mailbox history. Nothing. I called the HOA management company. They had no record of a hearing. The woman on the phone sounded tired. "Virginia schedules those herself," she said. "We do not always get notice either. You should probably just pay it. It is easier." I told her I was not paying a fine for a hearing that did not happen. She sighed and said she would make a note. I hung up and called Marcus again. He told me to send a formal dispute letter, certified mail, and to keep a copy of everything. I did. I also started taking photos. Every morning, every evening, every time the weather changed, I documented the salt stains on every sidewalk, the plow routes, the city schedule, the condition of my property. I bought a salt scoop and a small bucket, kept them by the door, and made sure I was clearing my walk every single day, even when it was pointless, because the plow would just undo it. I knew she was watching. A week later, Virginia was back. This time she had a tape measure. She was standing at the property line between my driveway and the sidewalk, measuring the height of the snowbank the city plow had left. I watched from the window, then I went outside. She did not look up. You are required to maintain a clearance of 18 inches from the curb face to allow for pedestrian access, she said. This exceeds 22 inches. That is a violation. I told her the city plow built that bank. She shrugged. Your property, your responsibility, she said. I am noting this for the next board meeting. If it is not corrected by tomorrow morning, I will be recommending an emergency compliance action. I asked her what that meant. She smiled. It means I will have the HOA hire a contractor to clear it for you, and you will be billed triple the going rate plus administrative fees, she said. I have all day, and so does my fine meter. I looked at the snowbank. It was frozen solid. The city plow had packed it down so hard it would take a pickaxe to move it. I asked her if she was going to measure everyone's snowbanks. She tapped the tape measure against her clipboard. Just yours, she said. You seem to have a pattern of non-compliance. She walked back to her car. I stayed outside and took photos of every snowbank on the block. They were all the same height or taller. I sent the photos to Marcus. He told me to send them to the management company with another formal dispute letter. I did. The management company did not respond. The next morning, I got an email. It was from Virginia, sent to the entire neighborhood group email list. The subject line was Compliance Reminder, Winter Pedestrian Safety. The body of the email was a list of violations she had observed over the past 2 weeks, with addresses. Mine was first. The list included salt stains, snowbank height, failure to attend mandatory hearings, and a new one I had not seen before, unauthorized business activity conducted from residential property. That was my document prep license. She was going after my income. I called Marcus immediately. He told me to stay calm, document the email, and start building a case. He said Virginia was inventing extra administrative fees that are not in the covenants, and that the business license attack was probably bluffing. Probably. I asked him what happened if it was not a bluff. He paused. Then you need proof she is lying, and you need it fast, he said, because if she files a formal complaint with the city zoning board, they will investigate, and even if you win, the process will cost you time and money. I asked him what kind of proof. He said anything that showed she was targeting me unfairly, making up rules, or violating HOA procedure. I told him I had photos, emails, and a dispute letter the management company ignored. He said that was a start, but I needed something bigger. Something that proved intent. I hung up and started going through the HOA covenants. I had a printed copy, highlighted and annotated. I found the section on home-based businesses. It allowed them as long as they did not involve client visits, signage, or increased traffic. My document prep work was all digital and mail. I had 0 client visits. I was clean. But Virginia did not care about the rules. She cared about control. The next day, I got a notice taped to my front door. It was printed on HOA letterhead, dated that morning, and it claimed the board had voted to begin lien proceedings due to unpaid fines totaling $350. The breakdown was insane. $50 for the original salt stain hearing I never attended, $50 for the snowbank height, $75 for failure to correct the snowbank within 24 hours, $75 for unauthorized business activity, and a $100 administrative processing fee. I had not paid any of them because I had formally disputed all of them. The notice said I had 48 hours to pay in full or the lien packet would be filed with the county. I took a photo of the notice, sent it to Marcus, and then I did something I had been avoiding. I called a lawyer. Her name was Angela. She specialized in HOA disputes. She listened to the whole story, asked for copies of everything, and then she laughed. This is the most blatant abuse I have seen in 6 months, she said. She is making up fees, skipping procedure, and targeting you because she can. The good news is she has left a paper trail. The bad news is fighting this will cost you more than the fines if you do it in court. I asked her what the alternative was. She said I could file a complaint with the management company, demand a formal hearing with the full board, and force them to produce documentation for every fee. If they could not, the fees would be void. If they tried to file the lien anyway, I could sue for abuse of process. but it would take time. Time I did not have if Virginia kept escalating. I asked Angela if she thought Virginia would back down. She laughed again. No, she said. People like her double down, but if you can prove she is lying, the board will cut her loose to avoid liability. You just need to catch her in something she cannot talk her way out of. I hung up and started planning. I needed proof she was lying about the fees, the hearings, or the rules. I needed something she could not deny, and I needed it before she filed the lien. I went back through every email, every notice, every photo. I found inconsistencies. The first hearing notice claimed the meeting was on a Tuesday at 7. The HOA bylaws required 72 hours advance notice for any hearing. The notice was dated the day before the supposed meeting. That was a procedural violation. The snowbank height violation cited a rule that did not exist in the covenants. I checked 3 times. The only snow removal requirement was sidewalks must be cleared within 24 hours of snowfall. Nothing about snowbank height. Nothing about curb clearance. She had invented it. The business activity claim was the flimsiest. The covenants allowed home-based businesses. She was twisting the rule to create a violation. I had proof she was wrong on all 3 counts. But Marcus was right. I needed something that proved intent. Something that showed she knew she was lying. That is when I remembered the gate system. The landing at Icefall Terrace Association had a vehicle gate at the main entrance. It was supposed to be automatic for residents, with a code for guests. 2 weeks earlier, my gate access had stopped working. I had called the management company. They said they would look into it. A week later, it still was not working. I had been using the guest code. I had not thought much about it. But now I wondered if it was connected. I called the gate vendor directly. A guy named Steve answered. I explained the situation. He pulled up the account. Yeah, your access was disabled on January 14th, he said. Manual override, entered by the compliance officer. No reason given. I asked him if that was normal. He said no. Resident access was supposed to be controlled by the management company, not individual board members. I asked him if he could send me a report showing the access logs. He said he could, but it would take a day or 2. I told him to send it as soon as possible. I gave him my email and hung up. I had my proof. Virginia had locked me out of the gate intentionally, probably to create another violation or just to harass me. It was petty, it was abusive, and it was documented. I called Marcus and told him. He told me to sit on it until the right moment. Do not reveal it early. Wait until she tries to deny something, then hit her with it in front of witnesses. The next morning, I woke up to another email from Virginia. This one was sent just to me. The subject line was Final Courtesy Notice. The body said the board had reviewed my case and determined that my pattern of non-compliance and disregard for community standards warranted immediate action. She was recommending the board vote to revoke my home-based business license at the next meeting, which was scheduled for 3 days from now. She also said that if I did not pay the outstanding fines by that meeting, the lien packet would be filed the following day. The email ended with a line that made my blood boil. Your paperwork is cute. Mine has a letterhead. She was quoting herself. She was taunting me. I forwarded the email to Angela. She called me back in 10 minutes. She is trying to force you into a corner, Angela said. Pay the fines and admit guilt, or fight and risk losing your business license. It is a classic power play. But she has made a mistake. She put the threat in writing. That is evidence of retaliation. I asked her what I should do. She said to show up at the meeting, bring every piece of documentation I had, and force the board to answer questions on the record. She also said to bring witnesses if I could. People who had seen Virginia's behavior. I called Marcus. He said he would come. I called 2 neighbors who had been on the wrong end of Virginia's enforcement before. One said yes. The other said she did not want to get involved. I understood. Virginia had power, and people were scared of her. The day before the meeting, the weather turned. A storm system moved in fast, dropping 6 inches of snow overnight. The city plows were out by 5 in the morning and they hit our street hard. I watched from the window as the plow came through, spraying a wall of slush across every driveway on the block. My sidewalk was buried. So was everyone else's. I got dressed, grabbed the salt scoop and bucket, and started clearing. It took me an hour. By the time I finished, the plow had come back through and buried it again. I gave up and went inside. I knew Virginia would use it. I was right. At noon, she was outside with her clipboard taking photos of my sidewalk. I watched her move down the block, checking every property. She stopped at mine, took extra photos, and made notes. Then she got in her car and left. I took my own photos, timestamped them, and sent them to Marcus. He told me to bring them to the meeting. That evening, I got the gate vendor report. Steve emailed it with a short note. This should help. The report was a spreadsheet showing every access event for the past 60 days. My access had been working fine until January 14th. Then it showed a manual override entry, operator code tied to Virginia Anderson, compliance officer. No reason given. No ticket number. Just a disable command. 3 other residents had also been disabled the same day. All of them people I knew had complained about HOA overreach in the past. It was a pattern. She was using the gate system as a weapon. I forwarded the report to Angela. She called me immediately. "This is gold," she said. "This proves intent. She is selectively enforcing access to punish people she does not like. That is abuse of authority. Bring this to the meeting. If she tries to deny it, read it out loud." I printed 3 copies of the report. One for me, one for Marcus, one for the board. I also printed the photos, the emails, the dispute letters, and the covenant sections Virginia had violated. I put everything in a folder and set it by the door. I did not sleep much that night. I kept going over the plan. Show up early. Sit in front. Let Virginia make her case first. Then dismantle it piece by piece. I knew she would try to control the room. I knew she would interrupt. I knew she would try to make me look like the problem. But I had proof. And I had witnesses. I just had to stay calm. The meeting was at 7. I got there at 6:45. The clubhouse was a low brick building at the back of the neighborhood, with a meeting room that smelled like old coffee and carpet cleaner. The board table was set up at the front, 5 chairs, nameplates for each board member. Virginia was already there, sitting in the compliance officer chair, shuffling papers. She looked up when I walked in, smiled, and went back to her paperwork. Marcus arrived a few minutes later, followed by my neighbor, a guy named Tom, who had fought a fence height violation the year before. We sat in the front row. A few other residents trickled in, curious or bored. By 7, there were maybe 15 people in the room. The board president, a retired accountant named Harold, called the meeting to order. "First item," Harold said. "Compliance report from Officer Anderson." Virginia stood up. She had a printed packet, stapled, with tabs. She handed copies to the board members and kept one for herself. She did not offer one to me. She started reading. "Over the past 30 days, I have documented multiple violations of community standards by the resident at 412 Maple Terrace," she said. "These include failure to maintain pedestrian walkways, unauthorized property modifications, missed mandatory hearings, and ongoing unauthorized business activity in violation of residential zoning covenants. The total fines assessed to date are $350. The resident has refused to pay and has submitted multiple frivolous dispute letters that fail to address the core issues. I am recommending the board approve lien proceedings and revoke the business license pending a full compliance review." She sat down. Harold looked at me. "Do you want to respond?" he asked. I stood up. I kept my voice calm. I said I had documentation that proved every claim in Virginia's report was either false or procedurally invalid. I said the first hearing never happened because I was never notified within the required 72-hour window. I said the snowbank height violation cited a rule that did not exist in the covenants. I said the business license claim was baseless because my work fully complied with the home-based business provisions. And I said the fines were invented administrative fees that are not in the covenants. I handed copies of the covenant sections, the emails, and the photos to Harold. He looked them over. Virginia stood up again. "The resident is attempting to deflect responsibility with technicalities," she said. "The fact remains that his property has been in repeated violation of winter safety standards, and his refusal to cooperate has created a liability risk for the association. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I heard Tom laugh behind me. Harold frowned. "Officer Anderson, can you provide documentation of the hearing notification?" he asked. Virginia flipped through her packet. "The notice was hand-delivered," she said. "I have a photo of it on his door." I asked her for the date. She said January 8th. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo gallery, and showed Harold a time-stamped photo of my front door on January 8th. no notice. Virginia's face tightened. That must have been removed by weather or vandalism, she said. The important thing is the hearing took place, and he did not attend. I asked Harold if the board kept minutes of that hearing. He looked at the other board members. One of them, a woman named Linda, shook her head. We did not have a hearing on that date, Linda said. I checked the calendar. There was no meeting scheduled. Virginia's face went red. It was an emergency compliance session, she said, authorized under Bylaw Section 12. I pulled out the printed bylaws and handed them to Harold. Section 12 requires board approval for emergency sessions, I said. Was there a vote? Harold looked at Linda. Linda shook her head again. Harold looked at Virginia. Officer Anderson, if there was no approved emergency session, then the hearing did not happen, he said. Virginia started to argue, but Harold held up his hand. Let him finish, Harold said. I took a breath. This was the moment. I pulled out the gate vendor report and handed copies to Harold and the board. I explained the access disable, the operator code, the date, and the pattern. I said Virginia had locked me out of the gate as retaliation for disputing her fines. Harold read the report. His expression changed. He looked at Virginia. Is this accurate? He asked. Virginia stood up fast. Gate access is a compliance tool, she said. Residents who fail to maintain standards forfeit privileges until they come into compliance. It is well within my authority. Harold shook his head. Gate access is managed by the management company, not compliance officers, he said. This report shows you disabled his access without board approval and without notifying the management company. That is not authorized. Virginia's voice got louder. I am protecting this community from residents who think the rules do not apply to them, she said. If the board will not support enforcement, then what is the point of having a compliance officer? Harold looked tired. The point is to enforce actual rules, not make them up, he said. Virginia slammed her clipboard on the table. Your paperwork is cute. Mine has a letterhead, she said. I have documentation of every violation. If you want to side with someone who is running an unlicensed business out of his house and putting the association at risk, that is your choice. But do not pretend this is about rules. This is about him thinking he is special. I stayed calm. I pulled out the last piece, a bank confirmation showing my payments cleared, and the HOA marked them late anyway. I had been paying my HOA dues on time every month since I moved in. But 3 months ago, the management company had sent me a late notice. I had disputed it, sent proof of payment, and they had corrected it. But the correction had never made it into Virginia's records. She had been using the late payment claim as part of her pattern of non-compliance narrative. I handed the bank confirmation to Harold. He read it and looked at Virginia. This shows his payments cleared on time, he said. Why do your records show them as late? Virginia did not answer. She just stared at me. Harold looked at the other board members. I think we need to table this until we can review all the documentation, he said. Officer Anderson, I am going to ask you to step outside while we discuss this. Virginia did not move. You are making a mistake, she said. Harold stood up. Please step outside, he said. Virginia grabbed her clipboard and walked out. The room was silent. Harold looked at me. We will need some time to go through this, he said. Can you wait outside as well? I nodded and walked out. Marcus and Tom followed me. We stood in the hallway. Through the door, I could hear the board arguing. Voices were raised. I could not make out words, but the tone was clear. They were angry. After about 20 minutes, the door opened. Linda came out and motioned for me to come back in. I sat down. Harold was standing at the board table. We have reviewed the documentation, he said. The board has voted to void all fines assessed by Officer Anderson due to procedural violations and lack of documentation. We are also voting to remove Officer Anderson from her compliance role effective immediately, and we are referring this matter to the management company for a full review. Additionally, we are voting to censure Officer Anderson in public, strip her committee powers, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. The gate access issue will be corrected immediately, and we will be sending a formal apology to all affected residents. I felt the tension drop out of my shoulders. Harold looked at me. "I am sorry this happened," he said. "This is not how the association is supposed to operate." I thanked him. Linda asked if I had any other concerns. I said no. Harold adjourned the meeting. I walked out into the hallway. Virginia was standing by the exit, holding her clipboard. She looked at me. "This is not over," she said. I walked past her without saying anything. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. "That was beautiful," he said. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 days later, I was checking my mail at the USPS mailbox cluster curb near the front gate. It was late afternoon, heavy snow falling, visibility dropping fast. I was pulling mail out of my box when I heard a car door slam. I turned around. Virginia was walking toward me, holding her clipboard. She looked furious. "You think you won," she said. "You think you embarrassed me in front of the board and now you get to walk away. But you do not get to destroy my reputation without consequences." If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA drama. I asked her what she wanted. She stepped closer, blocking my access to my mailbox. "I want you to admit you lied," she said. "I want you to send an email to the entire neighborhood admitting you made up the gate report, faked the bank records, and manipulated the board. And I want you to pay the fines." I told her that was not going to happen. She smiled. "Then I will make sure every homeowner in this neighborhood knows what kind of person you are," she said. "I will send emails. I will post on the group page. I will make sure no one ever trusts you again. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." I pulled out my phone and started recording. She noticed. "You cannot record me without my consent," she said. I told her Illinois is a one-party consent state. I did not need her permission. Her face went red. She reached for my phone. I stepped back. A sheriff deputy who had been sitting in his car across the street got out and walked over. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Virginia turned to him. "This man is harassing me," she said. "He is blocking my access to the mailboxes and recording me without permission." The deputy looked at me. I showed him the video. It clearly showed her approaching me, blocking my mailbox and making threats. The deputy looked at Virginia. "Ma'am, you need to step back and let him access his mail," he said. Virginia did not move. "I have a right to be here," she said. "This is HOA property." The deputy shook his head. "This is a USPS facility," he said. "You need to step back now." Virginia finally stepped back. The deputy looked at me. "Do you want to file a complaint?" he asked. I thought about it. Then I remembered Marcus's advice. Do not escalate unless you have to. I told the deputy I just wanted to get my mail and leave. He nodded and stayed until I finished. Virginia stood by her car, glaring at me. I walked back to my house. I sent the video to Angela. She called me an hour later. "That is harassment," she said. "You should file a complaint with the management company. If she keeps this up, you can get a restraining order." I told her I would think about it. I hung up and checked my email. There was a new message from the HOA management company. The subject line was formal apology and account correction. The body said the management company had completed a review of my account, confirmed that all fines had been voided, and that my gate access had been restored. They also said they had issued a formal warning to Virginia Anderson for unauthorized use of compliance authority and gate system access, and that any further violations of procedure would result in removal from the board. The email ended with an apology for the inconvenience and a promise to review enforcement policies. I felt a small measure of relief, but I knew Virginia was not done. The next week, I got another notice. This one was not from Virginia. It was from a law firm representing the Landing at Icefall Terrace Association. The letter said the board had received a complaint about my home-based business and was conducting a formal review to determine if I was in compliance with local zoning laws. It said I had 30 days to provide documentation proving my business license was valid and that my activities did not violate residential zoning. It also said that if I failed to provide documentation, the board would file a formal complaint with the city zoning board. I knew this was Virginia's doing. She had lost the HOA fight, so now she was trying to get the city involved. I called Angela. She told me to respond with copies of my business license, my tax records, and a statement explaining the nature of my work. She also said to file a complaint to the management company that triggers discipline. because this was retaliation. I did both. I sent the documentation to the law firm, and I sent a formal complaint to the management company outlining Virginia's pattern of harassment, retaliation, and abuse of authority. I included the video from the mailbox confrontation, the gate vendor report, the voided fines, and the emails. I asked the management company to take action to protect me from further retaliation. 3 days later, the management company responded. They said they had reviewed my complaint and determined that Virginia Anderson had violated multiple HOA policies, including unauthorized enforcement actions, misuse of gate system access, and harassment of homeowners. They said they were recommending the board vote to remove Virginia from all committee assignments and prohibit her from holding any officer position for a period of 2 years. They also said they were referring the matter to their legal counsel to determine if further action was warranted. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was finally over. The board meeting was scheduled for the following week. I showed up early again. So did Marcus. So did Tom. So did about 30 other residents who had heard about the drama and wanted to see what happened. The room was packed. Virginia was sitting in the back, arms crossed, glaring at everyone. Harold called the meeting to order and went through the usual business. Then he got to the main item. "We have a recommendation from the management company regarding Officer Anderson," he said. "The recommendation is to remove her from all committee assignments and prohibit her from holding any officer position for 2 years, based on documented violations of HOA policies. The board has reviewed the evidence and we are prepared to vote." Virginia stood up. "I have served this community for 3 years," she said. "I have enforced the rules when no one else would. I have protected property values. I have held people accountable. And now you are going to punish me because one resident decided to weaponize the system against me. This is a disgrace." Harold looked at her. "Officer Anderson, the evidence is clear," he said. "You disabled gate access without authorization. You assessed fines without proper procedure. You filed false late payment claims. You harassed a resident at a public mailbox. And you attempted to use the city zoning process as retaliation. The board cannot ignore this." Virginia's voice got louder. "I did what I had to do to protect this community," she said. "If you want to let people run wild and ignore the rules, that is your choice. But do not pretend this is about policy. This is about him." She pointed at me. Harold shook his head. "This is about you violating the rules you were supposed to enforce," he said. "The board is voting now." The vote was unanimous. Virginia was removed from all committees, prohibited from holding any officer position for 2 years, and banned from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. The room erupted in applause. Virginia grabbed her things and walked out. I watched her go. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. It was over. Or so I thought. A week later, I got one more piece of mail. It was from the city zoning board. The letter said they had received a complaint about my home-based business and had conducted a review. The review had determined that my business license was valid, my activities were in full compliance with residential zoning laws, and the complaint was without merit. The letter also said that filing false zoning complaints was a violation of city code and could result in penalties for the complainant. I smiled. The city had not just cleared me, they had slapped Virginia with a warning. I forwarded the letter to Angela. She called me back laughing. "She tried to use the city to do her dirty work and it backfired," she said. "That is perfect." I asked her if there was anything else I needed to do. She said no. The HOA had disciplined Virginia. The city had cleared me. The management company had apologized. It was done. I thanked her and hung up. I sat at my desk and looked out the window. Snow was falling again, light and steady. The plows would be out soon. My sidewalk would be buried again. But this time I did not care. I had won. The final twist came a month later. I was checking the HOA group email and saw a message from Harold. The subject line was, "Board Meeting Minutes, February." I opened it. The minutes recorded the board vote to censure Virginia Anderson in public, strip her committee powers, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. But there was another line I had not expected. The minutes also noted that during the investigation, the management company had discovered that Virginia had been filing false late payment claims against multiple residents over the past 2 years and had been pocketing the administrative fees as unreported income. The management company had referred the matter to law enforcement. Virginia was being investigated for fraud. I read the line 3 times. I could not believe it. Virginia's own abuse of the system had exposed her crimes. The minutes record the reversal and the reason. Her bluff got read out loud and the room reacted. Her own clip proves the opposite of her claim. I called Marcus and told him. He laughed so hard I thought he was going to drop the phone. She tried to destroy you and ended up destroying herself, he said. That is the best karma I have ever seen. I agreed. I hung up and went outside. The snow had stopped. The sky was clearing. I grabbed the salt scoop and the small bucket and cleared my sidewalk. Not because I had to, not because Virginia was watching, but because it was my home, and I was done letting her control my life. I went back inside, made coffee, and got back to work. The document prep business was doing fine. The HOA had new leadership, the neighborhood was quieter, and Virginia Anderson was facing consequences she had spent 3 years trying to inflict on everyone else. It was over, and it felt good. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.